My personal insurance just increased 40%. My feelings on this are going to be a little selfish. Putting on my conspiracy hat, I feel like the insurance companies are in bed with the government. I do think that is an important first step. So before I show you how much I was quoted by Progressive for commercial insurance, Lyft is now guaranteeing that drivers will receive at least 70% of what passengers pay once Lyft deducts external fees. Lyft's very own press release says that 15% of drivers made less than the 70% split after those external fees. That's not very impressive. So how could 85% of drivers make more than the 70% split after external fees, but only get 40% of the total passenger payment? Where the hell is that money going, and what can we do to get that money back? Those are the two questions we're going to explore in this video. This is coming directly from Lyft's press release under Lyft Rev blog. If you're a driver, check in from time to time. There's some useful things, some things that will probably make you upset, but this is where Lyft breaks down what external fees really mean. So according to Lyft, external fees include things like government taxes, airport and venue fees, and commercial auto insurance. But there's a special note here that insurance is mandated under most state regulations that provide coverage beyond the regular auto insurance. Lyft says that these fees vary significantly depending on state and city. They claim that last year, 24% of rider fares went towards these costs on average, noting that majority was going towards commercial auto insurance. And they claim to be working extremely hard to reduce external fees so that drivers can earn more. Helping drivers better understanding them is important. I do think that is an important first step, but as drivers who have been dealing with Uber and Lyft, sometimes they lie. Sometimes it's a PR stunt. And how are we really to know that majority of the external fees is actually going towards insurance? Here's what Uber has to say about their insurance fees. This was actually sent to me by a viewer who got an email from Uber that talks about insurance. Let's take a read. So here's what Uber is saying. Did you know that all 50 states, including Florida, require commercial auto liability insurance in addition to personal auto insurance for you to earn money driving on platforms like Uber? These important laws help keep everyone on the road safe, which is why Uber maintains this commercial insurance on your behalf, so you don't have to pay for it on your own. So immediately, the first thought that pops into my head is, do I want to pay for it on my own? I don't know, because I don't know how much commercial insurance costs, which we're going to dive into later in this video, but let's keep reading. Uber says, but Florida's commercial insurance coverage requirements for the TNC rideshare platforms like Uber are significantly higher than they are for nearly every other car on the road, including taxi. So if what Uber is saying is true, then does that mean carrying my own commercial auto insurance policy would end up being cheaper than having Uber and Lyft deduct that from passenger payments? As you're watching the rest of this video, start thinking about that. Would you rather pay for your own auto insurance if it was cheaper than Uber and Lyft taking it from passenger payments? Start thinking about that. Uber continues by saying, in fact, in Florida, on average, nearly 20% of the total price riders pay goes towards government mandated, I want to repeat that, government mandated commercial insurance. These costs have gone up a lot in the last few years, partly due to the rising cost of injury attorneys abusing the court system with their barrage of personal injury lawsuits. So yesterday we've seen that, Lyft is trying to offload some of the pressure off of themselves into these insurance companies and governments for these external fees. A lot of people think it's just a PR stunt. The 70% number is in fact a PR stunt because most drivers won't actually benefit from that because most drivers are making above 70% after external fees. The problem is the external fees are so high that even though Lyft is only taking 30% after external fees, the driver is still only making about 40, sometimes to 50% of the payment that passengers make. So if only 15% of drivers are going to benefit from the 70% minimum guaranteed split, this looks more like Uber and Lyft trying to get drivers to refocus their attention to the actual problem, which seems to be both insurance companies and the government. With Uber and Lyft not to be trusted at first glance, how can we trust this statement that Uber just provided to Diego, who's the viewer that sent me that email? I appreciate it so much, but how can we validate what Uber is saying? Let's take a look. In order to figure out if Uber and Lyft are lying, because they've done that before, I decided to go and get a quote for commercial auto insurance. But in order to make sure I was getting the proper amounts, I had to first understand how much Uber and Lyft were required to pay by the government. According to bar.google.com, the amount of insurance liability that Uber and Lyft are required to carry depends on specific phases of a ride and also varies by state. For both Uber and Lyft, when the app is on and drivers are available but have not accepted a ride, each company maintains personal injury protection with minimum state mandated limits for bodily injury and property damage, which typically ranges from $25,000 for bodily injury, $50,000 for accidents, $25,000 for property damage, all the way to $50,000 for injury, $100,000 for accident, and $25,000 for property damage. Now, when the app is on and drivers are en route to pick up a passenger or during rides, Lyft has at least a $1 million policy for third party auto liability, bodily injury, and property damage. Uber similarly has a $1 million third party liability for bodily injury and property damage. Uber also has a contingent, comprehensive, and collision coverage up to the actual cash value of the car, which usually the 2,500 deductible, but only if the driver has personal insurance with comprehensive and collision already. Little murky there, little weird that in order for Uber to pay anything out that you are required to have insurance already, which is fine. But this isn't the regular insurance. You'd have to get the rideshare endorsement on top of your regular insurance in order to like be safe from this. But that's not what we're here to discuss. So before I show you how much I would have to pay for $1 million liability coverage for my car insurance, let's first understand why Uber and Lyft have been forced to get that policy. So, number one, state regulations. Some states like California and Florida have implemented specific regulations for ride sharing companies, including minimum insurance requirements. While $1 million isn't mandated everywhere, it's a common benchmark adopted by several states. These regulations aim to protect passengers and the public by ensuring adequate financial resources for accident compensation. So it's not uncommon for companies that operate in various states just to make things easy for themselves, just go by with what majority of the states are saying. So number two is because of the insurance industry. Insurance companies may encourage or even require ride-sharing platforms to obtain higher coverage due to perceived higher risk associated with professional driving and unfamiliar passengers. They assess risk based off of accident frequency, severity, and potential payouts, leading to higher premiums for higher risk activities like ride sharing. So even if this is true, stepping away from Uber and Lyft, if the insurance companies are requiring these things, I would like to see the data that backs these things up. My personal insurance just increased 40% in 2024. I got into no accidents, I've gotten no tickets, yet my insurance has skyrocketed. These insurance companies, they need to justify with transparency why these fees are going up. So the next reason why they have to have these policies is for legal precedents and litigation. Accidents involving ride sharing have led to lawsuits with potentially high compensations, especially for serious injuries. Maintaining high insurance helps mitigate legal risk and potential financial burdens associated with such lawsuits. My feelings on this are going to be a little selfish, and it's that I should not be receiving less money from passengers because other people keep getting into accidents. We're going to expand that a little more once I show you the quote that I'm going to get for commercial auto insurance and how that could affect how drivers are paid in the future if we get the government to stop forcing Uber and Lyft to pay for insurance and potentially, maybe, put that burden on drivers if it's worth it financially. We'll do the math and see if it's worth it financially. So before I show you how much I was quoted by Progressive for commercial insurance, I wanted to show you proof that I picked similar policies to what Uber and Lyft are required to pay. So for bodily injury and property damage, we learned that they have to have a $1 million policy for this. And you can see right here that this quote includes a $1 million policy. Now, for the uninsured motorists and underinsured motorists, these values are actually higher than what Lyft and Uber are required to pay. But because Progressive did not give me an option to pick exactly what Uber and Lyft were paying in these categories, I decided to go to the next level up, which was $1 million. So when I show you the total for this policy, keep in mind that this insurance coverage is better than the ones that Uber and Lyft are forced to provide for drivers. So the total for a 6-month commercial insurance policy with $1 million liability coverage is $3,844. Let's break that down to see how much that is per month. So $3,884 divided by 6 months, that comes out to $647 per month for Tristan. Now, depending on where you live, this number could be higher, this number could be lower. It depends on your sex, your race, your zip code, a bunch of different things. It might not be your sex and race anymore, but it's definitely based off of your zip code, what kind of car you drive. I drive a 2017 Volkswagen Jetta. Those of you who have more expensive cars will more than likely have to pay more than this, but $647. The only thing left to determine is to figure out mathematically if it were to be better if I paid $647 a month for my own insurance, or if we continue letting Uber and Lyft taking that out of our passenger payments. If you found this video helpful, please consider giving me a thumbs up and a subscription. I put a lot of work into these videos. I come out with videos every single day while also trying to be a rideshare driver who goes out into the world and spends hours in his cars to drive and make money and make videos for you guys. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Now, because I don't have access to this new feature that Lyft is talking about, which shows the breakdown in payments yet, I have to rely on comments that you guys have been making in my videos. So in the story where I talk about the deception behind Lyft's 70% guaranteed split, which I know I spelled guaranteed wrong. I'll fix that after this video. There's a specific comment that I want to read that will help us illustrate whether or not it's worth it to pay for our own insurance or to continue to rely on Lyft and Uber to take those fees from passengers. There is something happening with insurance companies, the government, Uber and Lyft, and drivers. I am so on board with this. I'm actually getting fired up. So this information comes from a viewer named David Cox. Thank you for sharing this, David. He says, on my numbers from last week, the estimated insurance and other expenses are 53% of what I took home without tips included. That's high. If I paid $450 a month for commercial insurance, then I might make $1,200 to $1,500 more each month. And these are based off of his own numbers. We've seen that David's personal experience doesn't line up to the percentage that Lyft is saying. However, I want to do some math using Lyft's numbers to prove that it would still be better for drivers to pay for their own insurance. And not all drivers. Like I said, this part is a little selfish. This would probably only benefit full-time drivers, but I have a solution that can also be incorporated for part-time drivers too that I'll share with you once I show this math. Here's a reminder that 24% of rider fares went towards these costs on average, these costs being external fees. And here's also a reminder that Uber claims it to be 20%, but we're gonna go with Lyft's 25%. We're gonna just round it up to 25%. Let's assume a driver has made $100,000 in 1 year, just for the sake of keeping the math simple. Of that $100,000 that you received from paying passengers, Lyft is claiming that 25% of that is for external fees. So 25% of $100,000 is $25,000. And that's just for 1 year. We've already concluded I would have to pay $3,844 for commercial insurance. Let's round that number up to 4,000, and then we have to double it to see how much we'd have to pay for a year's worth of insurance. So that would be $8,000 per year that I would have to pay for commercial insurance. So in order to figure out the difference between what Uber and Lyft is taking from us for insurance and how much money we could save if we had our own insurance, we take that $25,000 and subtract the $8,000 that Tristan would be paying for his own insurance, and we would come out with a surplus of $17,000. I can understand that someone who does Uber and Lyft part-time would not benefit from having to pay for commercial insurance. The best solution here would be for Uber and Lyft to give us independent contractors the ability to decide if we want to self-insure with the minimum that is required, or if they want to insure us for those part-timers. It seems that Lyft and Uber have put up with this, maybe because they feel like their part-timers wouldn't be able to afford their own commercial insurance, but they're now facing a lot of pressure from driver pay and passenger payment because of these insurance companies and governments. But you let me know in the comments below. Would you rather pay for your own commercial auto insurance, or would you rather Uber and Lyft continue taking up to 50% of the passenger payment just to pay for insurance? Let me know in the comments. And make sure you also check out the video I made called The Deception Behind Lyft's 70% Guaranteed Split. It's right here. Just click on it and watch it. It's really good. A lot of people are commenting on it. A lot of people are enjoying it. Check it out.